Yes, well, it seems that this speech delivered by the new U.S. ambassador to Israel, Daniel Shapiro, this speech that he gave to an Israeli-based think tank entitled the Jewish People Policy Institute this September 6th, that his postulations do imply that the U.S. is putting the interests of the State of Israel and, in fact, the Israeli hard right, the Likudnik right, beyond those of the U.S. people and indeed the traditional U.S. imperial establishment. Of course, the traditional U.S. imperial policy was one of trying to prop up Arab strongmen in the region in order to facilitate the despoliation of the oil and gas resources in the Middle East. This new policy that's been pursued since 9/11, one of carving up the Middle East into small ethnic and religious statelets, is definitely a tectonic shift within the American empire. And when you have people like Daniel Shapiro, who are ardent Zionist zealots representing the United States, it does make you wonder what's going on. Of course, on 9/11, we did see that there were 5 Mossad Israeli agents arrested, which does seem to imply that since 9/11, that 9/11 ushered in this period, this rise of Israeli empire in the Middle East. This is, of course, precedented in the history of imperialism. Typically, when you have a global empire like the American empire does, it has to balance multiple vested interests. In the case of the American empire, it's interested in, of course, the resources of the Middle East, which requires it to do diplomacy and politics with Middle East leaders. Of course, that's quite bad for the State of Israel. We all remember, of course, in the early 1990s, in 1991, Saddam Hussein fired 31 Scud missiles at Israel, and that was at a time when the U.S. was backing him, which was in the traditional imperial interest of the United States. And so we see how there's this kind of schism within the U.S. imperial establishment where the Zionist faction of the ruling class, they want to take out all the Middle East leaders. They don't want any Middle East polities to have strong leaders who can stand up for their people, whereas the traditional policy of the U.S. is the obverse. Interestingly, on September 11th of all dates, Prince Turki Al-Faisal, who's an ex-Saudi intelligence officer, he published an article suggesting that if the U.S. vetoes the attempts for the upcoming Palestinian state, that it will create an uproar in the Middle East and in the Muslim world, which you'd think would be against the U.S.'s interest if it wants to, do commerce, do commercial deals in the region. And so the existence of the Israeli millstone around the neck of the American empire seems to be distorting its imperial policy. This one was, of course, devised by the likes of Paul Wolfowitz and Douglas Feist, both of whom lost their security clearances in the 1980s for passing classified documents to the State of Israel. In no other country would such saboteurs, such people who have engaged in espionage, then be allowed to get into the highest echelons of power. We know that Barack Obama is no different. The Democrat Party relies largely on donations from people like Daniel Shapiro's rich and affluent Zionist friends. And so this, of course, distorts the empire and makes it engage in things which are certainly against the interests of the American people and indeed are against the interests of the traditional American empire as they were traditionally conceived. Of course, people like Zbigniew Brzezinski say we should be, the American empire should be focusing on real sorts of enemies, Russia and China, and in which case it would be in its interest to work with Iran and work with the Arab and Muslim world. It makes no sense to estrange and alienate and attack and sabotage and commit subterfuge against the people of the Middle East when they're people who would be an obvious ally for the American empire. The fact that Israel doesn't want its neighbors to be strong and prosperous and doing well and wants its neighbors to be engaged in permanent civil war, fighting each other, distorts U.S. imperial policies.